Thanks, Jeff, and goodbye, everybody. Doesn't want to stay for the last session. Thanks for your time today. So today I'll be chairing a discussion with a couple of our contractors from the industry. I'd like everybody to welcome to the stage Scott Dowsett from Cook & Dowsett, Rob Elliott from Axis, and Evan Campbell from Leonate. So these guys have the unenviable job of doing a little bit of a recap for everybody. So they've been listening intently all day long as everybody else has just been passively absorbing the information. And we hope that maybe we get a bit of an insight into the industry from their perspective. So I have a few questions, and gents, whoever feels the most passionate may jump forth and answer the question. So a bit of a recap. This morning we heard from Robert Millwall and a great economic forecast. A lot of numbers there, a few references, or quite a bit of reference to the residential dwelling market. I'm interested from each of you gentlemen how you see the economy from essentially the coalface as contractors. Scott, if you'd like to.
Yes, we totally, from Cook & Dowsett, we're a national company. We've got an office in every state, so we see a mixture across, and we think the report was very accurate. In Victoria, we're seeing a lot of infrastructure projects, schools, hospitals, aged care and shopping centres. WA is going through a hotel and some apartment phases. Obviously, Sydney's going through a lot of apartments, which the infrastructure will come, and Queensland's a little bit quiet, but there's a mixture of everything there.
Yeah, thanks. We're just based in New South Wales, but yeah, we're sort of seeing a bit of a downturn, obviously in the apartment just coming off. Infrastructure's certainly up. The education is certainly spending more again after that big spike we saw from the BER this morning. And a lot of industrial, we're based in Sydney's West, and we're certainly seeing a lot of push towards the industry. Most of the guys moving out from this area out to the west and building big sheds out there, which is sort of all based around the future airport as well. Yes. Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, similar to these guys. We had our board meeting yesterday, and it tied in with the BIS report quite closely. Western Australia, Queensland, Northern Territory, very flat, not a downturn. Canberra, pretty steady, slight increase. Victoria, there's growth, and New South Wales, there's spending in every sector, and we're in all sectors, so it's busy times ahead.
Good stuff, thank you. Robert also spoke about the impact of population changes, net migration, everyone from New South Wales moving up to sunny Queensland, I think, and also about the kind of boom and bust cycle, so moving from one, I guess at the moment, from residential into everything else that you speak about. So the question is, are you seeing an impact of that population shift on your labour resources, the availability of, and are you having any challenge getting the right skill set as you change from one type of building to another?
We certainly don't. We rarely advertise for plumbers in New South Wales. We're involved in a lot of projects that have government funding. There's lots of targets that come with that government funding between long-term and unemployed, mature age apprentices, Indigenous apprentices, female contribution in construction. Providing you don't approach it as tokenism to just give someone a job to hit a target for the project, and it becomes part of your sort of strategic plan with employing people. We rarely have to advertise. Plumbing is a sought-after trade. We employed an apprentice probably about 2 weeks ago who was 43 years of age. We've probably put on 10 apprentices in the last 2 weeks. We probably employ 70 within the group. So we have no issues at all.
So yeah, similar to Rob there, we're certainly seeing a more diverse section of apprentices, certainly more influence of mature age, And that's just similar to what Paul touched on today. You know, some of those young kids really don't know what they want to do, and it's taking a while for guys to make up their mind and work out where they're heading before they sort of focus down and settle in on a job. Yeah.
Yeah, I concur with both you guys. We see that not the actual plumbing trade itself as our toughest challenge. We actually see it in the project management space. We all know that all the contracts that we're doing, all the buildings are being built to a contract now. They're not just being built off a set of plans. So we've got to upskill our plumbers. You know, back in the days when I did my apprenticeship at 15, that's sort of moving into another tertiary education. So Master Plumbers Victoria, we're established a project management diploma in plumbing with RMIT, and we're just trying to give apprentices not just a job but a skill set for life, and that's a career path, which was interesting with the skills session earlier before, because we see plumbing as an elevator to a career path. You can get off that elevator whenever you like. You can be a plumber and be happy with that. You can be a drainer, you can be an engineer, you can be a project manager, you can be a business owner. So I'm very passionate about the trade. So we just say continual training is the key strength of our industry.
Rob, I might just ask you to answer this one, but we were talking at lunchtime and you mentioned how you have quite a number of university graduates now coming into the business, engineers coming into what I think you called the middle office.
Yeah, look, we completely agree. The middle management pressures on our businesses today are quite significant, and a lot of that has come from product failure. These days, builders just don't want to know that you've put in the pipe. They want to know that you've put in the pipe, the right pipe, the pipe you said you were going to put in. You put the clip in the right place. How much glue have you used? Is it the right position in accordance with the model? So there's a lot of other skill sets that are required from what is another middle management structure within our business. To the point, we've had a cadet program for 4 years where we'd have about 10 university graduates that move for our business. Some filter into design, some filter into civil, some filter into project management. Others leave and go on to work for builders. I don't necessarily think the master plumbers, Paul had a plan with filling a void of 18 months of learning more away from the tools. I think you need both. I don't think it's a one fix all. I certainly think the master plumbers plan will help with that middle management void, but at the same time we still need plumbers to put pipe in, and a trade-based apprenticeship is still important in our strategy.
Thanks, Rob. Good. So you mentioned product there too, and making sure that the right product goes in. If we think back to Ivan Donaldson's piece, Ivan made the comment that, and I think I get the language right, that the whole regulatory environment is deaf. It's a fairly strong statement. Do you agree? And if so, what is it you think that they need to hear? Who wants to answer that one?
I think there was 60,000 products that get assessed, whether it's WELS or standards approval. Our clients have lost faith in that, and it may not be the initial certification, it will be the ongoing compliance checking. And it's not just products in our industry, it's products across the whole industry that are costing the industry a lot of money. So all of a sudden, we work in an environment where it's front of mind, selecting the right product. We don't necessarily rely on WELS or SAI global approval. We're looking, and which sometimes can affect innovation, we're looking for products and supporting products or manufacturers that have a proven track record in our space for 6 or 7 years. So new manufacturers coming into the market that aren't established, because we have such a big footprint, we have to steer away from.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that in that we're often seeing jobs that are quoted with really specific specifications that then you drive by project and you see products that are totally below standard of what that specification was, and you question, you know, what was tendered and what wasn't tendered, and then obviously that's creating problems down the track. But you know, the focus should be on, you know, the push for more of that quality standard, and like Rob's saying, with manufacturers that have been in the market for, you know, a long time, that we can guarantee that, you know, not just in our 12-month defect period, but for a long time down the track, that, you know, we can guarantee that that job's going to be fit for purpose.
Yeah, I concur. Also, we see not just a matter of after the 12-month defect liability, we're starting to get some callbacks after 10 to 12 years with simple things like coppers pitting out. We're seeing industry failures, and we're trying to get to the bottom of it. So there's a guy in WA at the moment who's been doing some work in that space, a guy called Phil Wallhouse, and he presented to the HSCA in Victoria. What is making all these failures? Is it air in the system? Is it high pressure? Is it pumping of the systems? But all we know is we're getting continual issues, and it's not from workmanship. We don't know what it's causing cause from.
Just to let you three guys know, Henry's 80 years old. Look, the other thing Ivan said was, look, he gave us a warning, and I think everyone will recall, Darwin, Newcastle, Victoria, of course, and warned us not to wait for the next catastrophe before something happens. I think that's a really smart comment. From your perspective, what might that next catastrophe look like if we continue as we are?
I say it all the time. Unfortunately, well, fortunately, we haven't had a death in the industry caused by plumbing failure products, and that is, you know, we do a lot of damage. There's a lot of water can do a lot of damage in a short period of time. You take the Glenville fire and also La Crosse fire. That was a, you know, catastrophe nearly for La Crosse. We've had in Victoria, we've had the carbon monoxide issue with a couple of deaths in the system, and that got industry talking. That really got, you know, 2 deaths isn't acceptable. Fortunately, unfortunately, plumbing failures don't cause death, luckily. And until something like that really happens, I think we're just going to be up against it.
We think there's some areas of our industry which are still unlicensed. Medical gases is one of those. And there was a failure not too long ago, and there was a death. So I think that's a compliance issue long term as an industry that we probably should look at a bit closer.
Thanks, guys. Queensland, I was going to say seem to be, but they are really leading the charge on Watermark. They seem to be really further advanced where we'd all like to be on point of sale for Watermark. And Bonnie Ryan spoke about how sophisticated our global supply chains are today. And I think that leads to the question, are you confident and how do you stay confident that the products you're being supplied are safe for use and safe for install?
Yeah, I think we're still, you know, very reliant on our own research as well as information provided to us by suppliers and manufacturers. And I think it's, you know, a big responsibility to us as contractors to make sure that we do our research, because really, you know, the point of sale, you know, there is no control there. You know, we talk about, you know, the likes of Bunnings, where you can virtually walk into Bunnings and buy anything on the weekend from your own gas pipe and go and do your own gas installation. You know, so it's
sausage
really
sandwich, maybe.
Yeah, sausage sandwich. It's a tough area to really control and police. You know, to what's being sold at point of sale. Yeah.
Just for me, you mentioned Queensland. We see different, and you know, we advocate highly about more regulatory authority. We see Queensland very progressive in a lot of areas, but it's still a lot of slow way to do business. Victoria is self-certified. A lot of our work in Victoria is D&C, whereas Queensland, you still have the old council inspector stamping the drawings and making sure that's compliant. So we don't, you know, Victoria needs the lifted standard and its authority to check the checker, but we don't really have all that, you know, red tape as much as Queensland's got.
So, I think from memory, there might have been a couple more things, but one that stands out was the presentation on BIM, which certainly plays into the whole regulatory discussion and visibility about what's going in and going on in construction. Do each of you use BIM? Is it advantageous to your business, and is industry, the supply chain, doing enough with BIM to support you guys?
There's a lot of issues why BIM costs a lot of money and at the moment doesn't add a lot of value. The consultants, a lot of the consultants' models are offshore, India, Malaysia. The quality of what we get from consultants we generally can't reuse. We don't necessarily think that's the fault of the consultant, it's what they're being paid to deliver at the front end. A lot of what we see is conceptual design. We see things get pushed to market a lot quicker, and then we take on a D&C role. So we end up with a D&C in parallel trying to use a BIM platform, and sometimes the C can almost overtake the D, so it can be quite challenging. So at the moment, and a lot of that's driven by builders, consultants, contractors adding value to a design to save a property owner money. So they may start out with a scheme design, but by the time it's built, it could look entirely different.
Yeah, I agree there with you, Rob. The time frame from concept to basically construction has been certainly squashed, to a point of basically nearly every project you start is, prior to a CC or an interim CC, and the design's catching up. And like Rob said, that no one wants to pay the money up front and then throw the responsibility back on the contractor to complete the design. So we're not sort of seeing total drawings that are of use, and like Rob said, we're making total changes to them as we build the job.
Yeah, once again, I agree with both you guys. We saw the this power and strength of it from John's presentation. It's here to stay. It's how we utilise it in our business. Agreed that by the time we got on site, the models aren't even designed yet, and structure doesn't, the overlays don't match. So we're taking risk amongst ourselves just by installing pipework with the model before the model's even caught up. But will it get cheaper? Can industry help? I think John also touched on it's getting cheaper as more people are using it, and that's just from time management. So essentially, it's you got a time-based engineer just in there designing. That's what the cost is.
I think at this point it's probably fair that we throw to the audience if there are any questions of these guys. Remember, they've been sitting here listening all day, making sure that they remembered every presentation.
All three panel members, if they could give a comment on, is it about time that instead of this race to the bottom, that the industry took a hold, and you look at what the industry generates as a national domestic product, or whatever you like to call it. But, we keep saying it's getting cheaper and cheaper, but there comes a time when quality will override, and it's things like deaths and things like that are impacting on us at the moment that seem to make the difference. But we're also not hearing about the near misses. And even though I think it was Alan mentioned 3 or 4 items in national catastrophe, I guarantee if we heard about all the things that happened, we would have something of a near miss every second week. So I would say to the industry, with what I've heard here today, isn't it about time that the people that we've got in the industry and the representation we've got, we can have a greater impact than what we're having at the moment? Can I have a comment from the 3 speakers?
I'll open the batting up, Kevin, and say it's price driven. It's only a reward if you're not in it. It's so. That was a joke, by the way. No, absolutely, Kevin. We know Lendlease was mentioned today, for example. They've identified that plumbing is their greatest risk in their business for the failure component of it. They've even had projects where they've employed full-time supervision to look at the plumber because they've still taken the cheapest price. So how we change that, I don't know, Kevin. Cook and douse it. We don't chase the bottom. We know when to walk away. But there is an issue out there for sure.
I'd just like to say that if we went back 20 years, we certainly took longer to build our projects, but we didn't have systems in place like we do today, such as quality management systems, environmental systems, WHS systems that we as business owners and managers are making sure that although that project's happening in a very speedy fashion, that it's still going in a safe, quality way. And I'm not saying that's happening across all the board. We're competing on many levels of different contractors, but certainly, on my level, that I make sure that that's what happens. So that although it's happening a lot quicker, that it's happening still as safe, and we're making sure our procedures, making sure that happens.
I think to address the safety component first, collectively we work for a lot of tier 1 clients. I think from top down, through our own business and through our clients' business, safety, we have an extremely strong safety culture. To the point from a LTI perspective, we haven't had more than a day lost in the last 4 or 5 years, and we employ over 350 people. So from a safety culture and a quality culture, it's very important as what we provide as a service to the business. In relation to a race to the bottom, I don't think we're the only trade in that position. I was at an industry night the other night, and it was a question and feedback section, and one of the auditors that audits us financially and all trades before we get one of these big jobs was asked by the MD of this particular company, what's the biggest risk moving forward? And the response to that was people and companies operating on low single digit margins in this market. The MD seemed to think that might have been just good accounting. Maybe it's a combination of both, but it is a competitive market. Unfortunately, the industry's become smarter. Government knows how much per bed to build a hospital. Corrections know how much per bed to build a prison. And a developer building apartments has a similar unit rate. So it's not often that we're competing amongst ourselves. Quite often we're competing against the cost plan as to whether or not we want that project. What New South Wales certainly faces in the coming couple of years, projects are still being won on price and program. And if our preceding trades are struggling to resource their component, which might be structure, like structure is a very good example where the supply chain has an issue. You used to be able to cancel a concrete pour and then rebook it for the next day. These days, if you cancel a concrete pour, you may not get that pour for another week. So that, on a big project, that can impact significantly, but the end project date doesn't necessarily finish. So for us, that just means more resources to still deliver a project in the same timeline. So we're having to become smarter about the way we procure things, about the way we design things, because it can't be just a continual competition on margin. Otherwise, we will become extinct.
Thanks, gents. Any further questions yet?
Yes, to Scott. You mentioned about Queensland where they've got still the plumbing inspectors there, and you said it's a little red tape. Which way do you prefer?
Well, probably not as far as regulated as Queensland, but more than Victoria. So somewhere in the middle, to be brutally honest. Because the question is that we get awarded a project and we're meant to be on site the next day, and we've just already spoken about our designs not even developed yet. the builder will start pouring concrete. So the whole process, so in actual fact, we're forced as contractors to actually work outside of our licence boundaries, take a risk to install pipe, even though it hasn't gone through the approval process, to keep our builders happy. So where in Victoria, you can start the next day and you're self-certified. So I still think, and then we go back to the engineers, so we want a full regulated industry where the consultant takes care and he can sign off his own design, or do we get them half-baked and 40% designed, which obviously causes issues. So is there a better quality plumber in Queensland or Victoria? That'd be a good question, and in around a boxing ring you'd probably sort that out. But we say that the Queensland plumbers are a lot more compliant and they probably understand their regulatory authority more so than the Victorian does, and they're self-certified, which is a worry.
Any more questions? No, thank you. Gents, I really do appreciate your time and the insight that you've given us. Just in closing, if you might answer this either one or two ways. What was the most important thing you took out today, or what is the most important thing you would perhaps like the audience to take away from your part of the industry?
Oh, for me, I suppose, I also President of Master Plumbers Victoria and sit on the Master Plumbers Australian Board. For us, it's about partnership and collaboration, making sure that we're all together in this, from the cradle to the grave, and that's from the product to the people installing it. So we shouldn't be fighting each other, we should be trying to work through any issues that we have.
Yeah, agree with that. It's just nice to be in a room with, key players in this industry from all across Australia, and just to hear different perspectives and to keep up to date. I think that was, what we took out of it. It was really great to see, that economic forecasting, and that was certainly relevant with what we're sort of seeing and the way the market's playing out for us as well.
Look, I attended one of these about 2 years ago, maybe 3. I didn't think it was really relevant to where we sat in the trenches. I think today certainly dealt with all the key issues and the challenges that we necessarily face. I don't think as a group we've collectively got around how we're going to work through all those challenges. I think some people look for a single fix, like one regulative body is going to fix all our issues. I think it's a bit like business, if everyone lifts, if all businesses lift, if every area of the plumbing industry lifts together, I think we can fix the problem. So.
Thank you. On that note, round of applause for the